Our world is more connected than ever before. We trade goods and share ideas across continents. Planes carry people between distant cities in hours. The internet lets us communicate instantly, but this interconnectedness also brings danger. A conflict in one place can quickly spread. Today, the threat of World War III looms large. It would be a catastrophe unlike any other, a tragedy for all humankind. We must understand the devastating consequences of such a war. Nuclear weapons could unleash unimaginable destruction. Economies would collapse, throwing billions into poverty. The environment would suffer irreparable damage. It is a future we must avoid at all costs. The stakes are incredibly high. Our actions today will determine the fate of our planet. We must choose diplomacy over destruction, cooperation over conflict. The survival of our species depends on it. The most terrifying aspect of World War III is the potential for nuclear war. Countries possess weapons of unimaginable power. These weapons can level entire cities in an instant. The death toll would be in the millions. The effects of a nuclear explosion are horrific. The blast wave levels everything in its path. Intense heat sets fires that rage for miles. Radiation poisons the air, water, and soil. Survivors would face a slow, agonizing death from radiation sickness. But the horror doesn't end there. Radioactive fallout would spread across the globe, contaminating food and water sources. The planet would be plunged into a nuclear winter. Temperatures would plummet, leading to crop failures and mass starvation. The use of even a single nuclear weapon is unthinkable. A full-scale nuclear war would end human civilization as we know it. Even if nuclear weapons are not used, World War III would trigger a global economic collapse. Modern economies are deeply interconnected. Countries rely on each other for trade, finance, and resources. A major war would shatter this delicate balance. Global trade would grind to a halt as borders close and supply chains are disrupted. Financial markets would crash, wiping out savings and investments. Currencies would collapse, leading to hyperinflation and economic chaos. The consequences for ordinary people would be devastating. Businesses would close, unemployment would soar, and poverty rates would skyrocket. Food shortages would become widespread as supply chains break down and agricultural production plummets. People would be driven to desperate measures to survive. The economic fallout from World War III would be felt for generations. Rebuilding from such a catastrophe would be a monumental task, requiring international cooperation on an unprecedented scale. World War III would be an environmental catastrophe of epic proportions. Modern warfare relies on incredibly destructive technologies. Tanks and aircraft pollute the air with toxic fumes, explosives contaminate the soil and water, and the destruction of infrastructure can unleash environmental disasters. Oil spills from damaged pipelines and tankers would pollute vast stretches of ocean, killing marine life and disrupting ecosystems. Chemical plants and refineries could be targeted, releasing toxic substances into the air and water. Fires would rage across forests and farmlands, releasing massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The long-term consequences of this environmental damage would be severe. Climate change would accelerate, leading to more extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and widespread ecological collapse. The planet's ability to support human life would be severely compromised. The environmental cost of World War III would be immeasurable. It would be a war against nature itself, with consequences that would reverberate for centuries. To Section 5, a sea of suffering. Beyond the physical destruction, World War III would unleash a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented scale. Millions, even billions of people would be displaced from their homes, forced to flee from war zones or seek refuge from environmental disasters. Refugee camps would overflow, straining resources and creating breeding grounds for disease. Children would be orphaned, families separated, and communities torn apart. The psychological trauma of war would leave lasting scars on entire generations. The breakdown of social order would lead to an increase in violence, crime, and human rights abuses. Access to healthcare, education, and other essential services would be severely limited. The most vulnerable populations, children, the elderly, the sick, would bear the brunt of the suffering. The human cost of World War III would be immeasurable. It would be a war against humanity itself, leaving a legacy of pain, suffering, and despair. Section 6. The invisible war within. In the 21st century, warfare has extended beyond the battlefield. Cyber warfare, the use of digital attacks to disrupt and disable enemy infrastructure, would play a central role in World War III. Hackers could infiltrate power grids, shutting down entire cities and plunging them into darkness. Banks could be crippled, freezing financial transactions and causing economic chaos. Communication networks could be disrupted, sowing confusion and panic. Governments could use cyber attacks to spread propaganda and misinformation, undermining public trust and fueling social unrest. The line between reality and fiction would become blurred, making it difficult to distinguish truth from lies. Cyber warfare is a dangerous and unpredictable new domain of conflict. It can be waged remotely with little warning and potentially devastating consequences. In World War III, it would be an invisible war fought in the digital realm with real-world consequences for every aspect of our lives. Section 7, the collapse of order. World War III would not only destroy physical infrastructure, but also shatter the institutions and norms that govern international relations. The United Nations, designed to prevent such conflicts, would likely be paralyzed by divisions among its member states. International law, treaties and agreements would be disregarded as countries prioritize their own survival. The rules-based international order, painstakingly built over decades, would crumble, replaced by a chaotic and dangerous world of power politics. The collapse of global governance would have far-reaching consequences. It would be more difficult to address shared challenges such as climate change, pandemics and nuclear proliferation. The world would become a more dangerous and unstable place, with a heightened risk of future conflicts. The breakdown of international order would be a major setback for human civilization. It would represent a failure of diplomacy, cooperation, and our collective ability to solve problems peacefully. Section 8, picking up the pieces. The aftermath of World War III would be a time of unimaginable hardship and uncertainty. The survivors would face the daunting task of rebuilding their lives and their societies from the ashes of destruction. The immediate priorities would be to provide food, water, shelter and medical care to those in need. Restoring basic infrastructure such as power grids, communication networks and transportation systems would be essential for any hope of recovery. The international community would need to come together to provide humanitarian assistance, financial aid, and technical expertise to support the rebuilding process. This would require setting aside political differences and working together for the common good of humanity. Rebuilding after World War III would be a generational challenge. It would require immense resources, unwavering commitment, and a shared belief in a brighter future. Section 9, the long road to recovery. The road to recovery from World War III would be long and arduous. It would require not only rebuilding physical infrastructure, but also healing the psychological wounds of war and rebuilding trust between nations. Education would play a crucial role in shaping future generations. Teaching the lessons of the past, promoting tolerance and understanding, and fostering a commitment to peace would be essential for preventing future conflicts. International cooperation would be more important than ever. Addressing global challenges such as climate change, poverty, and disease would require collective action and a shared sense of responsibility for the future of the planet. Recovering from World War III would be a test of our collective wisdom and resilience. It would require learning from the mistakes of the past, embracing a spirit of forgiveness and reconciliation, and working together to create a more peaceful and just world. Section 10, the price of peace. The potential consequences of World War III are too horrific to contemplate. The loss of life, the economic devastation, the environmental destruction, the humanitarian crisis. The price of such a conflict would be immeasurable. We must never forget the lessons of the past. The two world wars of the 20th century demonstrated the catastrophic consequences of unchecked aggression and nationalism. Millions died, and the world was left scarred for generations. We have a moral imperative to prevent another such catastrophe. The pursuit of peace must be our highest priority. It is not a naive dream, but a necessity for our survival. The choice is ours. We can choose the path of conflict leading to unimaginable suffering, or we can choose the path of peace, building a better future for ourselves and generations to come. Section 11, a call for wisdom. In a world facing numerous challenges, the threat of World War III looms large. It is a reminder of the fragility of peace and the importance of diplomacy. We must reject the voices of division and hatred. Embrace our shared humanity. We are one global community. Demand that our leaders prioritize diplomacy over military action, choose wisdom over folly, peace over conflict, and hope over despair.